Time to write some more code. Let's begin by creating a new project for our Sonnets app, and we'll call it Sonnets, and we'll pick the Windows Phone data bound application. As you can see over here in the miniature view, it's an app that has an application title, a page name, and a collection of items in a list box that the user can scroll through to put actual data in. In our case, 154 sonnets from the Bard. So we'll click OK and create the new solution. And before we actually start adding our customization in here, we'll change the name of the app and change the name of the page title, and then explore some of the differences between this solution and the one that came from our just plain Windows Phone portrait application setup. So as always, first thing we'll do is reformat the XAML. Click in the XAML pane and select Edit Advanced Format Document so we can see all of the attributes. Over here in the designer view, you'll see that the list box visually appears to have data in it. Design 1 followed by some lorem ipsum, design 2, and so forth. We'll shrink this down just a little bit so you can see it all. Between Visual Studio and Expression Blend, there's a way that you can create data that shows up only at design time, just so that you can see the way the items in your list box will work. Right now, we're just going to completely hide the entire designer pane so we can look at the XAML. That is done by adding in this XML namespace here for Expression Blend, and then providing these three items here, the design width, design height, and design data context, which says in the sample data directory, there's a XAML file that has the sample data that we want to load into the list box. We don't actually touch the sample data, but it's useful if you had other kinds of data. This is where you're going to find that in order to be able to customize the sample data as you customize your user interface. Now we'll scroll down here and change the name of this. We're going to call it Sonnets. And we're going to change the page title to All. And the reason is because in the subsequent chapters, we're actually going to build a Sonnets app that allows you to have the list of all sonnets and your favorites. So we want to make this look visually similar. The next thing we'll see, if we go down now to the content grid, is that the content grid is filled with a list box. And the list box uses Silverlight data binding, something that you should be familiar with from the Silverlight course or from your past experience with Silverlight. You see here the item source is the items property from the binding. And here's an event so that when someone taps on one of the items in the list, the selection changed event is raised and this method is called. And there's a data template for this list box which sets up exactly the visual appearance of the two text blocks that represent each item in the list box. In this case, the first one is bound to the line 1 property and is set up as phone text extra large style. There are a number of textual styles so that you can have your apps look like the built-in apps. So there's an extra large style, there's a large style, and there's also something called subtle style, which is what line 2 is set up, so that the line 1 we use in this app to show the number of the sonnet, line 2 we show the first line of the text, and that's bound to the line 2 property in the view model. One last thing before we get off of the main data binding is just to show that we have in the source code here, a view models folder, which is where this actual data context comes from, the main view model, which is where the line 1 and line 2 properties are. And the sample data for designing comes out of this sample data folder. You saw the URI up there before for main view model sample data. So that's the setup that this project template configures for Silverlight data binding. Let's move on and take a look at the model view model pattern in implementation.